Joseph ONeill.
Hi, Tyler. It's been a while since we've done this.
It has. It's been a while since your last show.
True. Pandemic and all.
So, talk to me. The last year, 2 years, the world has been through a lot. New York City has been through a lot. And you also have been changing as an artist. So, your muse, you often say, is New York City. If I was thinking on the way, coming here about how I describe your work to other people, there's a lot of words that come to mind: urban and industrial and abstract. How do you describe your work to someone?
I usually will reference them back to my artist statement where I describe it line-based, shadows, and now with color I've added that also. So it's basically geometrically inclined and stuff.
And what have you learned as the world has been changing these last couple of years? So your work has also taken a...
I don't want to say that the world influences my work because I don't look at it that way. I don't think, oh, today, there's devastation going on, I need to go, do something positive in life. So I don't look at my work that way. I see it more as just an expression of what I see in New York. Yeah. It is what we all take for granted, the minutia and the smallness and the miniatureness, the close-ups of New York that we never pay attention to.
Yeah.
The facades, the brickwork, the way the shadows hit this part of the building while the other half is in darkness or light and so forth and so on. So that's why I see my work that way.
Now, a lot of times you've been, walking around the city at night, in the middle of the day, and I would have think in the past you probably had to avoid people, but now with the last year, the city of New York has emptied of a lot of its population.
Yeah. I mean, during the pandemic, there were days where just to get out of the apartment, I would have to walk the streets of New York. Nothing was open, so that was strange. It was an odd feeling, not having to be aware of the people around you anymore was odd.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I don't, when you shoot, you're always trying not to capture. I'm not trying to capture people in the photographs. So, but in walking down the High Line, where you were the only person, I was the only person on the High Line at the time, and I'd be just like going, "This is too freaky."
Yeah.
It was weird. It was a weird way to live.
New York City as a deserted set.
It was. You almost felt like like somebody dropped a bomb. And it was like post-apocalyptic.
Apocalyptic, yeah. I still feel that way.
Yeah, I do, but I feel we are coming back alive again, and that's wonderful for New York.
Yeah. Well, we were just talking a second ago, you and I, about the number of shows that you've done. Take us back. When was your first gallery show? And what do you remember about it?
My first solo show and my first group show.
Your first solo show.
My first solo show was at Phoenix Gallery in 2017, and that was 4 years ago. My first group show was in 2013, and that was a small little gallery in heart of Chelsea in the gallery district, and the gallery's no longer there. And that they tore down that gallery's building and built some high rise. I think it's actually where the Zaha Hadid building is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where
which now features in your work.
Yeah. Yeah, it is featured prominently in my work. It was called the Skylight Gallery, and I don't think it's you could even find it anymore.
Yeah.
So funny.
So that doesn't feel like that long ago in some ways, but it feels a long time ago in the journey of your work. Who were your influencers when you launched into photography?
Initially, when I started in photography, I was more of a street photographer. I would just take my camera and walk the streets and take pictures of people in the city. I wasn't really interested. I was more interested in what was going on in the city than actually what the city was made of. So initially, it was a French artist named Eugene Agent. He photographed Paris at like 4 or 5 in the morning when nobody would be on the streets and it would all be emptied. And that's what I really gravitated to at that time period when I was shooting early on. And I'm talking about probably 2005 to about 2013, 14. That's what I was gravitating towards in my photographic work. And he played an important part, it was. He shot in black and white, and I think that's probably why I went into black and white initially, because I was trying to emulate what he was doing in that way. And I had a friend early on who said, you need to decide whether you're going to be a black and white photographer or you're going to be a color photographer, and I chose to be black and white initially.
So how many gallery shows are you up to now? Because you're
I've had 5 solo shows, 4 in New York, 1 in Korea, and multiple group shows.
Yeah,
I
all
can't
over.
even count anymore. It's got to be close to probably around 100 to 150.
you know, there have been points where keeping up with where all of your things are is daunting because you've got.
It was fun for a while, you know, but then it became cost prohibitive, having to ship your work to different parts. I mean, I was doing shows outside of New York. I was doing a lot in Europe, some in Asia, and a lot in like Chicago and Philadelphia and LA initially. Because when I signed my contract with my first gallery, I wasn't allowed to show within 100 miles of New York City,
I didn't know
except
that.
in
Okay.
that gallery. And that's the common thing among galleries. They want to keep you exclusively for themselves usually. So they limit how far you can, whether or not you can show in other places, especially in New York. And I did not like that. I hated that idea. I wanted to, that's where I lived. I lived in New York. I wanted to show in New York. And so I got out of that contract after a year and I said, okay, time for me to move on. The current gallery I'm with allows me to do as many shows in New York City as I want. I have no limitations, and that's great for me. And it allows me to do stuff that I normally wouldn't show, more landscapes sometimes, or portraits, or other styles of photography.
Now, so let's talk about your current show. It's called The Color of Things. And this is your first show that is in color. That's not black and white.
Yeah.
And you just mentioned that a long time ago you made a decision to shoot in black and white.
Right.
What made you decide that this is going to be your first color show?
I was posting photographs on Instagram during the pandemic, and they were mainly black and white, like I normally was shooting. And this girl actually liked my work, and she was an artist. And I went to her Instagram account and checked out her work, and it was what I was doing in black and white. She was doing in color. Not exactly the same, but it was. And I looked at it and I said, well, it can be done. Maybe I should try it. And that week, I got my first COVID-19 vaccine, and I had my camera with me, and I had the vaccine. I got my shot at the at CCNY, and I decided to take my camera and walk down from there, and instead of taking the subway because I didn't feel safe on the subway at that time. Yeah. And as I did, I just started shooting in color, and I won't say it opened my eye, but it made me realize that I'm capable of doing what I like to do, the geometric lines and shadows and stuff, but in color. But it was very difficult initially to readjust my eye. And all photographers will talk about this. You train your eye to look for things when you shoot, and especially if you're shooting outdoors or that kind of thing. You start looking for, in this case, I was looking for color. And in New York City is glass, it's gray, it's black, it's steel. So it was really difficult for me to come up with probably 10 shots that I thought were good, decent enough in that first time. And as I started adjusting my eye and teaching my eye to look for things, it moved and it became, within a month, I was just now blossomed. I just exploded on me, where I was now, every time I had my camera out, I was finding color after color after color. But again, it was focusing in on it and learning to look for it instead of looking for what I was looking for before, which is more of the lines. And now it's looking for color.
Was it exciting for you to try something new?
It was, because it was a challenge for me, and I like a challenge initially. And then it became interesting because it was just so out of my comfort zone. And I was like, okay, I can do this, I can shoot. And then I started shooting both in color and black and white, so I didn't feel like I was losing my eye for black and white and lines and that kind of stuff. Because, the eye gets distracted by color, I find. There's an old saying, what is it? When you shoot a person in color, you're shooting their clothes. When you shoot somebody in black and white, you're shooting their soul. And I feel the same way about cities and buildings. You're shooting their soul, but in color, it's a distraction. And I don't mind that now. I don't truly believe in that anymore. I think you can find the soul in color too.
Yeah.
And so.
This show, your current show, The Color of Things, has How many pieces are in it?
I tried to narrow it down to below 50, and I just couldn't. I ended up with 61, but I started out with probably close to about 1,000 photographs, and then it's just a weeding out process. And you become really harsh on your photograph. You have to be. It's not what's good about this photograph. What's wrong with this photograph? And so you start weeding and weeding them out, and then you finally ended with 61. Why not 60? I don't know. I like odd numbers.
When you look at the overall collection, is there a particular area of the city that that you found? Are they all New York City, by the way? Are they?
Yeah, they are all. Obviously, this is all New York City because I wasn't able to travel at all, and I would love to go to other cities and photograph them in color too. And my next couple trips, I will be traveling internationally, so that should be interesting to see if it will transpose to another city. Because where I work is down, I live in Hell's Kitchen, so I would walk down either 10th, 11th, 9th, or 8th, or 7th Avenue to get to work every day. So that's where you're talking about, so Hell's Kitchen, Chelsea, the Village, that was where I was shooting. And it was very rare that I was going anywhere else outside the city at that point because I didn't feel safe with the pandemic going on.
Are there any things that when you look at the show as it stands, are there any things that jump out to you and themes that
So this was really a very, very curated show for me. Most of my other shows have always been a hodgepodge or a rogues gallery style. This one, I literally started looking at themes, and one of them was iconography, using numbers and letters in photographs and art to express an opinion or a style. And then I started matching colors together. I did one series where it was just a rainbow, where I did red through violet. I did the organic versus the inorganic. So I did a series of photographs that were all where you had nature intersecting nature and buildings together. So that it was more, like I said, it was a more curated show for me.
Are these things that you were looking for as you were taking photographs, or are they things that you noticed about your work when you were curating the show?
At least when I go out to photograph things, I don't plan for anything. I just come across them and then I'll photograph them. And a lot of times they don't work, and sometimes they do work, and that's the nature of any art. Sometimes you get it right, and sometimes you don't. I wasn't really looking particularly for any color per se. It was just if it was colorful, then I would shoot it. And a lot of times there are buildings that are painted yellow, and I was trying to shoot yellow, and it just was not working at all. And then there were lines, of course, and that's also very important to me, is lines and shapes. Another series were all vertical lines, and they ran the gamut from orange to green to blue in different colors, and grays even were included in that. So it was that way. I enjoyed putting it more cohesive collection together. It was totally different for me. The other shows I never really felt I was able to do that with. I just didn't. I think it would take too much of my time just to figure out how each photograph should work together.
Right.
So this one I deliberately went that way, and I worked on it for about 3 months trying to get the right photographs together that I thought would work.
I mean, when I looked at this show and I saw how different it is than some of the other work, another thing that leapt out at me was that there is still your signature style. I mean, that it's new, but also there's something that feels very specific, to you and what you do.
I didn't lose my style at all in this. It's just now including color into it, and so lines, shadows, shapes, and now color. So it was an interesting journey.
Do you have a favorite piece in this?
Of course I do. I think every artist does. So if you've been to the show, you'll notice that I did different sizes, 8.5 by 11 up to 24 by 18. And the bigger the photograph is, the more I like it, because I want to show it. So I feel that I need to show. So any of the bigger photographs that were in that show were the ones that I truly loved. Not to say that the others weren't important, but those were the ones I loved.
It's like picking between your children. It's like,
which is a pretty of the two. You do that kind of thing.
Now, I was thinking about textures, because something that I have noticed in your work is that on a lot of your black and white work is that you have gradients of gray. You're also photographing different materials in buildings, and in addition to that, you also have been printing in different styles. Too. So how do you think about texture as you're taking photographs, and how do you think about it in the way that it comes across in your prints?
I don't think texture is important to me when I'm actually photographing something. It's when I go into the editing process where I start looking at texture and contrast and that kind of stuff. And that's when, because on a camera, you're looking at a screen that's maybe this big. So you're not going to see the minute details that you really want to see until you look at them on a larger screen. And that's when I start looking at texture and I'll start playing. A lot of times, especially with this show and with color, the color was the most important thing. Then the second most important thing was the softness or the harshness of the photograph. With the editing software that's out there these days, I can take any photograph and literally make it really high contrast to low contrast and to play around that way. What I found is that the really more textured photographs were the photographs I shot in 35 millimeter, because there's a natural graininess to that format. So, and it lends itself well to doing very textured photographs, I find.
What camera are you using predominantly right now?
I use an old Nikon F series from I think they started making this model in 1998 and stuff like that, but I just feel it feels akin to me. I feel comfortable in it. I've looked at more modern 35 millimeters and they're more technically challenging for me, I guess would be the right word. But also, I don't feel, it's like digital. It's like the camera's doing almost everything. Where the old style, you're still having to manipulate the f-stop and all the other things necessary for photographing.
Now, you're mostly self-taught as a photographer, but you have taken some specific courses to brush up on a few techniques. Do you find that you rely on your own intuition, or are you including folding into it some of the things that you picked up from others?
Certain things, from doing 35 millimeter, and it taught me patience. With digital, I was always click, 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 and maybe one of the 5 I just took of the same thing would be good. With 35 millimeter, you have to be patient. You can't waste film. It's too expensive to do it that way, as opposed to digital. So I picked up that. Every artist, I think, has to be intuitive. You have no choice. You have to take what you taught and then transpose that into what your work is. And so that doesn't mean it wasn't important, but it doesn't mean it's a be-all, end-all. There's an old saying that when you paint in college, you're painting college work. And when you get out into the real world, you start painting real world stuff. So that changes and stuff.
What do you find is the character of this show that sets it apart from what your last?
Well, besides color, it's more commercial for me. I think people are more in tune to color and they like color more. So it's more commercial than I really would ever have thought of myself going that way. I always consider myself to be that rebel on the outside looking in and going, you don't like my work? I don't care. Now it's sort of, you get some pleasure from people saying, wow, this is such a change for you and so different, and it's wonderful to see how your art is growing and you're growing with it. So that's important.
Are you seeing any other artists out there right now that are fellow travelers in this area of photography?
I try not. It's funny with me when I look at other people's art, especially photography. Sorry, not art per se, but photography per se. I find that I am very critical, and I go, yeah, I can see what he's doing. I see what he's trying to do, and it doesn't impress me at all. Not because I just feel that everyone thinks of themselves as photographers now, because our iPhones are, the cameras have gotten so good on our iPhones and everything else. And therefore, people are like, ooh, look at these great photographs. And meanwhile, I'm looking at them going, okay, whatever. Let's move along here. But art-wise, paintings and other things, maybe because I'm not good at it, that I'm fascinated with that medium and stuff. But I chose the camera as my art form for
Yeah.
a reason.
Yeah.
I felt
Yeah.
that it spoke to me as a person.
Now, within all that, I mean, I think you've talked to me before about how in certain gallery settings or museums, photography is often given kind of short shrift here
Yeah.
when it comes to being considered a serious art form
Yeah.
in line with others. Why is that? Does it deserve better?
Yes, it does deserve better. I love that the MoMA and the Met have opened up gallery wings dedicated to photography. Used to be the Metropolitan would maybe have one photography show or two shows a year. Now they have a whole wing dedicated to it. They also have a whole new wing dedicated to contemporary photography, which is odd for them because they usually don't like to deal with contemporary art. The MoMA has always done photography as part of its, general, exhibition schedule. Why? There's so many reasons why it's a relatively new art form compared to the others. It's only been invented almost 160 years ago, 170 years ago. And it took until the 1900s, early 1910, where it finally was given the acceptance in the art world as an art form. And there, Alfred Stieslitz, who was the most famous of them at that time, brought that art form into the forefront and made it into a true art form. And also because photography is in the moment, where I can literally take 100 pictures in an hour, where an artist has to spend years to make 100 paintings or other sculptures or that kind of stuff. So it's instant art, and I think that's part of its attraction among the critics and the curators in the art world, is that it's not a true art form in that sense.
Yeah.
You're not creating anything, you're looking at something and taking a picture of it. So people don't look at it that way. Now with digital enhancement in software, you are now getting to be more creative with it. You get to change what you photographed. And, not to say that other people haven't been able to do that. Man Ray did his whole surrealist photographs, where it's him playing in the darkroom and playing with the settings and the exposure and everything else. So, but this is giving it a broader base now. You now have more opportunity to create than to just document. And that's where I think it's changing now. We're going from a documentation style into more of an art form.
And do you see, what's in the future for photography? Do you see it growing now that everyone has a camera in their pocket? Or
I read one time where there are over 3 million photographs taken every day, or something like some ridiculous number like that.
Most of them from you, right?
Yeah, please, yeah. I've been that busy. I can't foretell what is going to come in the photography world. I used to think that digital was going to be the B, and I couldn't see anything else going after digital. I mean, it's like you went from LPs to 45 to cassettes to CDs and now to digital music. So what else is there in the music world in that format? So same thing with photography. I think it's that way too. I don't. Maybe I'm blind to it, or I just not intelligent enough to foretell the future. But I think we've gotten to an area where you're talking about probably the next 100 to 200 years. This is going to be the medium that where we're going to be stuck in.
Yeah.
Not stuck in would be the right word, but where we're going to stay with it.
Well, let me ask you an adjacent question. What's happening in the photography world? What's happening in your world? What's next for you? Where do you go from the color?
I mean, I believe as an artist, you need to change. And you listen to music from the same artists over and over again, you'll notice that once they get into a particular pattern, they stay in that pattern or that groove or whatever, or that style. I need to change. It's just part of who I am. So I'm looking again to start shooting people and doing portraits again. I did this 4 years ago. I did a whole series of nudes. Now I'm looking to do portraitures again. And then when I get done with that, I will move on to something else. I just have to.
Yeah.
I can't stay stagnant that way. I don't think you grow as an artist if you constantly are doing the same things over and over again. I love artists who like to do mixed medium stuff because it means you're moving out of your comfort zone. You're moving into an area, and and it may take time for me to move into that, but I will get there. And once I do, and once I feel comfortable in that medium, I will find great photographs.
You are so busy. I mean, you've got you when you talk about the 1,000 photographs that you are picking between for this show, how do you handle the amount of photographs that you're taking, and how do you manage your hunger to take more?
What I find myself doing is that I will do, like with this last show, the color things. I basically photographed from March to September. And once I found that I had enough to do a show, I stopped photographing. Then it became the editing process, editing the photographs, and so it's sort of like it's a rhythm to it. I mean, you find yourself now. I mean, I had somebody ask me, why didn't you include this photograph I took 2 weeks ago in this exhibition? I go, because I didn't want to have to go back and change again and add new stuff. So I will wait and use that for another show. So you start to see patterns in your own personal life with this in art, and with any art. You find that you're more productive at this time of the year or that time of the year, and then also you have to balance the business side of the art world with your creative side, and so. Being a Libra, we go up, we go down. Yeah. So 1 week it's all art, next week it's all business. And I do that a lot of times with my art.
And they can feed off each other.
Yeah, they do. And also it allows me to become more selective. I'm constantly now, when I'm doing the business side and sending my portfolio out, I am looking at these photographs now instead of just taking it, editing it, and putting it aside and looking at it later. So now I'm doing that aspect of it. I'm also, now that I'm starting to get ready for my next project, which is portraits, I'm now starting to look at other people's portrait work and stuff like that. It's preparing myself for what I think I want to do or what I want to work with the models that I'm going to be using and stuff.
That's great. I mean, we'll look forward to it.
Thank you.
So this show, The Color of Things, how long is it on? Where can we see it?
It runs until November 27th, 3 days after Thanksgiving. It's, I think, commercially my most successful show. I've sold more photographs in this show than I've shown probably in all my other shows combined, probably, which is, nice.
Where's the gallery? What are its hours? When can we come?
Pleiades Gallery. It's an artist collective. It was started in 1972 in Soho. There was a big, during the hippie generation, the boomer generation, there was this big drive for acceptance among artists that were not going to ever make it to the MoMA. You needed a space to work. So that's where this gallery came out of, that generation of artists that started, and it survived from 1974 to present day. So you're talking almost 50 years. Wow. This collective has been together, and it's a group of very talented artists, and I'm one of two photographers in the group, and most of the other artists are some are mobiles, some are oils, some are acrylics, some are graphic artists. So there's a good mixture of artists in this little group. The gallery's located on at 547 West 27th Street, Suite 304. We just moved there. It's a new space for us, and I love it. I think it's so much better than the old space we had. It has natural light, which I adore, and it works well with my work.
And when can someone walk by and see your work?
The gallery's open Tuesday through Saturday from 12 to 6. It's always been Sundays and Mondays, galleries have always been closed. Yeah. It's like, it used to be butchers were always closed on those days. The hairdressers seem to be, those are your rest days for the, different.
So so you've got a couple more weeks of The Color of Things. Yeah. I'm sure it'll be bittersweet for you to take down those pictures.
I will end up going through what I call my postpartum depression stage, where about 2 to 3 weeks after the show closes, where I'm going, I feel like I've lost. Yeah. When you spend that much time on a project and you finish it, it's like, what do I do now? And I'm like that and stuff like that. And it motivates me. It makes me go, okay, let's get going on your next project. Let's get going on your next project.
Yeah. Well, I hope people hearing this will have a chance to come by and see this show. Yes. They can also find your work online.
True. On my Instagram account, which is JoeIam1. And on my Facebook account with Joseph ONeill, and you need to find me. That's a little more difficult. There are a lot of Joseph O'Neills there.
Yeah, but you're the only photographer.
Yes,
I think.
yeah.
So I hope they'll have a chance to come and see this show.
I hope so too.
And we'll look forward to your next,
Yeah.
your portrait show.
I hope so too.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure. Thank you,
Thanks.
sir.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you, my brother.